When we think about ancient Indian rulers, it is probably the Mauryan Emperor Ashoka that comes first to our mind. Ashoka is a well-known figure in modern times, but this was not the case earlier. By the 19th century, Ashoka's name was completely forgotten and his history no one knew. It was only after the successful decipherment of the Brahmi script by James Prinsep and the works of other scholars we were able to rediscover Ashoka. The disappearance of Ashoka's name from the popular memory was not an overnight process. After his death, we find that there was a period when Ashoka was still remembered as a great king from the past. In this video, we will look at how Ashoka was remembered in ancient times. Now, we all know that Ashoka had a special relation with Buddhism. So it is not surprising that he figures prominently in Buddhist sources. In some of the sacred sites associated with Buddhism, we find that Ashoka is depicted as a great patron of Buddhism. Take for example the Sanchi Stupa. We all know that Ashoka originally constructed this stupa, and around the 1st century BC, important additions were made to this stupa. One of these additions were the Toranas or gateways. In these Toranas, we find the earliest surviving sculptures of Ashoka. In the southern Torana, we can see the description of Ashoka's visit to the Ramagram Stupa. The story of this visit and why it holds a special place in Buddhism is narrated in the Sanskrit text Ashokavdan. Here we are told that he had come to Ramagram to take with him one of the original relic deposits of the Buddha. Another sculpture of the same Toran depicts Ashoka's visit to the sacred Bodhi tree under whose shade Buddha attained enlightenment. Around a century after these depictions at Sanchi, we find that Ashoka's figure also started to appear in southern India. In the Gulbarga district of Karnataka, there is a site called Kanaganahalli. Around 2000 years earlier, this was an important Buddhist site. In 1992, archaeologists discovered this sculpture from this site. A Brahmi inscription that was inscribed on this sculpture reads Raya Asoko. Thus, it is quite clear that the king who is depicted in this sculpture was none other than the famous Mauryan emperor Ashoka. Apart from these sculptural representations, we find that Ashoka is present in sacred Buddhist texts. Even in the accounts of Buddhist travelers who came to India, we find the mention of Ashoka. Fashian, who came to India during the time of the Guptas, mentions Ashoka. Another famous Chinese traveler, Wenzhang, has also mentioned Ashoka in his writings. Even in the 12th century AD, we find that Ashoka's name was still not forgotten. From Sarnath, we have a copper plate grant that mentions Ashoka. This grant was commissioned by a queen named Kumar Devi. Kumar Devi was the queen of the Ghadwal king Govind Chand. This grant informs us that it was meant to restore what existed during the time of Ashoka. The grant reads, and I quote, "This lord of the turning of the wheel, Sri Dharmachakra was restored by her in accordance with the way in which he existed in the days of Dharmashoka." The fact that even after some 1400 years, Ashoka's name has still survived tells us that for the people of 12th century India, Ashoka was an important figure of the past. This can also be seen from a text that was composed during the same period but in a region that was far away from the Mauryan core. This was the region of Kashmir, and the text which I am talking about is Kalhan's Raj Tarangani. In this text, Kalhan talks of Ashoka as a king who founded the town of Srinagari. Srinagari is not far away from the modern city of Srinagar. Interestingly, Kalhan describes Ashoka as someone who embraced the doctrine of Jin. Now the term gene here is quite perplexing because in the copperplate grant of Kumar Devi, gene term is used for Buddhism. Now why these sources have used the term gene although they were familiar with the term Bodh is a question that has not been resolved yet. Now coming back to Kalhan's account, we find that Kalhan tells us that in Kashmir, Ashok not only built stupas but he also built two temples which were called Ashokeshwar. Ashok worshipped Shiva and through this worship he obtained a son who was called Jaluka. Kalhan tells us that Jaluka later went on to exterminate Malechhas from Kashmir. Now the credibility of Kalhan's account when it comes to the history of Ashok is a matter of debate because Kalhan describes Ashok as the great grandson of Shakuni. Now I will not go into this debate, but what is clear is that in 12th century India, Ashok was a well-known figure. Kalhan's account is also important for us because it became the basis on which Abul Fazl wrote the history of Kashmir in Aine-Akbari. Now what is interesting about Abul Fazl's account is that he takes the word Jeen from Kalhan's account and converts it to Jain. This misunderstanding leads him to conclude that Ashok abolished the Brahmanical religion and established Jainism. Although on one hand, Abul Fazl writing about Ashok can be seen as a sign of Ashok's continuing presence in the historical memory of the Indian subcontinent, but it also shows that for Abul Fazl, Ashok was merely a ruler of Kashmir from the past. The true history of Ashok was forgotten. By the 19th century in India, even the name of Ashok was forgotten. No one knew that there was once a ruler named Ashok who ruled most of the Indian subcontinent. The fate of Ashoka's capital, Patliputra, was also similar. By the 19th century, Patliputra's history was forgotten and even the name of this city was forgotten. If you want to know about how Patliputra was rediscovered, please watch this video. If you like this video, please subscribe to this channel and thank you for watching.